Hello everyone, I'm Ryan from 2 Car Pros, and today we're going to be taking a look at how to replace the window regulator motor for a 2004 to 2008 F-150. This is my personal truck. I like working on it. It's pretty easy and straightforward. And as far as window regulator motors go, this is one of the easier ones. It's very approachable. I call out the tools as I use them, and I also used this diagram while I was working on the vehicle. You can pause it here and reference it back. I'm also going to try to put a link in the description for it. And I think this also applies to expeditions around this era. It's going to be very similar if you have an expedition or even a Super Duty, I think. But regardless, it's going to be very similar, and this is for an F-150. So let's go ahead and jump right into it.
All right. The first thing we're going to do is apply masking tape to the window to hold it on, so that way while we're working on this window and we remove the track, it just doesn't fall down into the door. It has the potential to shatter or cause injury. Three large straps like this should do the trick for you and hold the window in place so it doesn't fall down. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is remove these two bolts on the bottom of the door panel here, and they are 6 millimeters. The next thing we're going to do is grab a small prying implement and pry this little door here open. We can remove that. That'll expose our next two bolts, which are both 8 millimeters. Go ahead and remove those. Like that. Next thing we can draw our attention to is the switch panel here. We need to pry that off. Just like that. So here is the back side of all of your main switches here. We can press on the safeties and pull back on them to remove them. They're very, very easy. Like that. Okay, so the next bolt we need to remove is right here, right where the end of my finger was just there, and is a 10 millimeter. We can go ahead and remove that. There she is. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we need to get this speaker mesh pried up and out. We're going to go from the bottom in case we mar it up. It's a little less visible. And pull straight out with it, that way it doesn't get damaged. All right, and there's 4 bolts holding this speaker cover on, and they are 5.5 millimeters, just little guys. There we go. And we can remove the wires going to the actual speaker, just like that. The next thing we're going to do is remove this bit of weather stripping here, but don't shred it. We want to keep that intact for when we replace it. All right, for this shot, I have to kind of be in most of the frame here, because what you're going to do is grab down here on the little cubby holes and pull up and out this way, very slightly. It might fight you a little bit, and then you'll realize that the door cable is still attached, so we need to remove that next. All right, it is secured in a very similar way to like a throttle cable would be secured. So we got to pull up on here, get that out of its housing, and then pull the cable over to the right and lift out just like that. It's exactly like a throttle cable if you've ever undone one of those. So that leaves us with a bare empty door here, and you'll notice some plastic. This is waterproofing. You don't want to rip holes in this too much. You want to keep this as intact as possible, but we do need to remove the lower plastic, and do try to keep it as maintained as possible. If you do like tear it or rip it, it might be worth it just to order some new ones. Oh, you know what? Actually, you do have to remove the whole thing because it is one piece, and I've already started tearing mine, so be careful. And if you want to just tear off a little bit while you're working, that would probably be fine, but since I'm doing an instructional video, I want the visuals to be as clear as possible, so I'm going to go ahead and remove mine. So the next thing we need to remove, and I can't really show you due to their positioning, are behind this slat and this slat, is two 10mm bolts that hold the glass clamp onto the glass. So this is the part where you really want to make sure that your window is secured. So remove those. And don't worry if you drop them in the door, the bolts in the door, you can get them later. There we go. There's one. Okay, and then we can start removing all these 10mm bolts we see. So let's go take this over to the workbench and compare it to our new one. So here we have our old unit. This one doesn't work anymore. It doesn't even turn on. You can hear it trying, but it's junk. It's old. So this is the replacement unit from Motorcraft, a WLRA-3. I will have a link below in the description to this exact part. This is for the driver's side. If you have a passenger side, it is going to be part number WLRA1 for the Motorcraft stuff. I'm doing the driver's side, obviously, because the driver's side usually goes out the most, even though I do have to do both of them, but they're the same thing, just a little bit mirrored. So we're going to take our new window regulator out, and I can't recommend enough to use the Motorcraft replacements. If you buy an off-brand or a cheapo something, you might be doing this again very soon, and that would be frustrating, so I'm trying to save you from that frustration. Oh yes. Oh, that looks great. Okay. So we can set ours up in a similar configuration to how we removed it. I believe it's like this. Nope. Before we put this window regulator motor back in the truck, I will point something out to you. You can see here one of our glass clamps, our top one, is all the way over to the left, as is our bottom one here. And you'll notice on the new one, I don't know why this is this way, it's not that at all. You see the glass clamp is here and here. They need to be all the way over here so they match up with our window that is in the up position. So I'm going to show you a little trick. All right, so what I've done is hook the window switches back up. The truck is in the ignition position, and as you can see, our window clamps here that need to clamp onto the bottom of the window are basically in their down position, and we can verify that by pushing down on here, and you see the clamps move down. So these need to be actually all the way up, and be careful when you're doing this because you don't want it to fall. So once both of these window clamps here at their top position, do not go too far on this one. There is no stop, so it can just go clear off the rails, and then you'll be sitting here for 45 minutes getting that back on. Ask me how I know. This one has a stop though. I don't know why you designed one to have a stop but the other one not to. It'd take like 2 cents worth of zinc. Anyway, rant over. Now we can get back to putting this back into the door, and we can remove this and take the key back out of the ignition. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is replace the window regulator motor. It goes in like this. Before we install it, I have to show you that window clamps need to be in this position. That way you have access to them after you've put them in the door, because if you wind them up too far, you won't have access to the window clamps. I guess you could probably put them in and wind them up and down until you find them, but this seems easier. Now we're going to replace the window regulator motor. Just like that. Awesome. Now it's really going to be about getting those mounting bolts in their correct home, which is not too difficult. Not too bad. Okay, so we're going to get our first 10mm bolt here. I use my left hand to prop up the mount until I can see the bolt hole, which I can. I'm not going to tighten it all the way just yet because I want some flexibility when I'm doing the other bolts. And those are all 10mm, and I don't know the torque spec. Tight is good. I tell you what, if I find a torque spec, I'll put it on screen. But just to let you know, if you don't have a torque wrench, that's more than fine. Just tight is good. You can even use your right hand here and feel up there. You can feel the glass clamp on the bottom of the glass because the glass kind of curves like this down into it. It's really cool. And then we're going to do this top left one. And again, you can feel the glass clamp right there. It is on perfectly. And then to finish these off, I'm going to tighten these by hand just so I know how tight they actually are. These should be on decently tight. Don't strip it though, you just want to make sure it's not moving. And it's not, it's perfectly good. This bottom one here. This one here. Here, and you could probably have left the bolts on the regulator like they came, because there is a hole right here where you could kind of just like latch it into position, you know, kind of like hook it into the door frame, the door skin here. But that's okay. It was really easy to do it the way I did it. I prefer it the way I did it because I had a little bit more flexibility and stuff. But don't forget to do your glass clamps too, and I absolutely recommend using a hand tool for that instead of an electronic one or a pneumatic one, just because, well, you're clamping glass. We want to feel back there too to make sure that it is that the glass is fully seated down into the glass clamp, because if it's not, the relation between the regulator and the glass will be different, so it'll end up either jamming your glass way too high and breaking it, or it won't go down all the way. So we want to make sure that the glass is fully seated in both clamps here, and you can use your hand to verify both of those. Yeah, this one's perfect. Oh, yeah, that one's good too. So I'll tighten that up. There's a 10 millimeters, like most things on this truck. Not everything though. And you don't want to Hulk tight this either, because you don't want the clamp to crack the glass. So just tight enough is good. Nutty. And we can't forget to plug it back in to the wiring harness down here. And if you removed the tape to test that, go ahead and tape it back up. Okay, the next thing we can do, since the window is supported, is remove our masking tape. We're going to want to test the window before we move on. The fact that it didn't fall down and shatter into a million pieces and scare all the children in the land, that's a good sign. Got the door switch plugged in again, let's see. Oh yeah. And there you go. Now we can put the door back together. So I just wanted to take a moment just to show you what the back of the door looks like, just in case you're frustrated and you can't really figure out what's holding on the door. Besides the bolts we removed, it's basically these, you know, hangers, these little hooks here that actually keep it on the door. That's why I said you have to pull up and out a little bit So that's what the back of the door looks like, in case you're wondering, and this is also an excellent time to clean your door. This is an unprecedented opportunity to take it apart, clean down in there, clean on the armrests and stuff, clean the things you don't usually think of. The next thing we need to do is take some silicone rubber. You can buy this at pretty much any hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's, etc. And we're gonna apply a bit to, you can either try to do it on the door and do your best to do it that way, or you can apply a lot to your finger and just trying to trace around the silicone rubber that's been hardened. You can also remove as much as you want, but I don't want to remove too much because then I won't remember where everything went. But you want to remove like the really large piece. So it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be factory. I can tell you that right now. It's not going to fool anybody. Just try to get as much silicone rubber as you can, the old silicone rubber off, and then we're going to apply a bead of new silicone rubber here. And you don't want to use too terribly much. I'm actually probably using a little too much, but you just want to trace over just like that where the old silicone was, and just try to scrape off as much as you can. It doesn't have to be insanely perfect. It's a pickup truck, not a submarine. So there we go, that's what it looks like when the silicone rubber is reapplied. I have gone a little bit thick on there, so maybe you want to use a little bit less, but the way I figure it, if any of it kind of squeezes out to where I can see it, I can just grab a razor blade and cut it off once it's hardened. We can grab our door plastic here. Try to remember which way it went on. Like this. I'm going to go top to bottom with this. So it goes like this. It's important to wear gloves here too. Oh, messed that up. There we go. That's better. It's important to wear gloves here too. You really don't want silicone rubber on your skin too. Okay. And the next thing we need to do is replace our door latch cable here. It's pretty much the inverse of how we removed it. We got to put the cable back into its home like that. And then make sure this latches all the way down. Like that. And now we can put the door skin back on. Basically the same way we took it off. And we want to make sure all our electrical connectors are still available through the lock panel hole. You might even want to remove your door lock indicator prong and put the door in the locked position, as that can get in the way. Okay, so I got the door back on, and there's absolutely a secret to it. These securing fasteners, whatever you want to call them, that go right here in the speaker compartment, were preventing the door from going down and up. They were probably fighting me on removal as well, but on install it was particularly noticeable, so remove these and save yourself some headache. Okay, the next thing we got to do is replace these inserts. There's 4 of them for the speaker mount here, and we take them out. We put them in the same way we took them out, basically in reverse. Just push them in place and you just rip them out. Reach down in there. One is the wires from the head unit, and the other one goes up to our tweeter. They only get plugged in one way, so it goes like this. Don't worry about mixing those up. You can't actually plug them in wrong. Make sure those are nice and secured, and we can put this plate back in. I'm gonna grab our 5.5 mil socket, load up our weird little teeny tiny bolts here. Make sure you do these in a cross pattern, not very tight, because they're little bolts, so you don't put them in super tight. Alright, we're going to make sure that all of our connectors are here and accounted for, and not pinched somewhere unfortunate within the door. We're going to replace them like so. There we go. Blue, gray. Now before we go anywhere or do anything, we're going to make sure everything works. Alright, we need to replace this bolt here that's very obstructed and hard to see. Sorry about that. It's that 10 millimeter, has a washer on it. Then we can replace those 8mm bolts we removed out of the handle area. And then we can replace our little trim piece here. There we go. And then we can replace the switch panel. Snap that back into place. And then down here, those two 6mm. There we go.
All right, so that's how to replace your window regulator motor for your Ford F-150, and I had to replace both of them because it's a funny story. It's my personal truck, and on the way home from a big road trip, we were using the windows up and down a lot because we were in a really pretty part of the country, and within 1 hour, both of them were broken. That was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. They were just destined to go out at some point or another, and they just did at the same time. And I'm fairly certain the driver's one had been replaced at some point in time. So that's interesting. They don't last forever, and the driver one is what goes out the most. It is odd to have a passenger window regulator motor go out, but it does happen. I mean, it happened to me, so there you go. And like I said in the beginning of this video, this is a very approachable window regulator replacement. This is something I believe anybody with tools and a little bit of time could do, and you're going to be saving untold amounts of money doing this yourself and ordering the parts off of Amazon or Rock Auto instead of going to the dealer or a shop and having them do it. They are really going to take you to the cleaners, especially on window regulator motors. So I have total confidence you people out in YouTube land can definitely do this repair. It's super easy, super approachable, and something you could do in a garage type or even a driveway type situation. Thank you so much for watching. All blinkable links are down below in the description. You've been wonderful, and I will see you next time.